We're actually going to talk about this a little bit because, as you remember, for our priorities for 2012, they've been our priorities for a great deal of time, and that is Unified Development Code changes, and those Unified Development Code changes to support existing neighborhoods. And that became one thing that we were very concerned with. And we've been talking about this issue since 2005. In 2005, when the city came to us and said, we want to initiate proactive code enforcement, we returned the favor by saying, we don't want you to be our homeowners association. And we need some way by which we can account for situations that don't match the new codes. Now, we've been waiting for quite a while. 2 years ago, we were told by Paul Brotzman that we would get those kind of changes at the time that the OVOV changes were being implemented into the UDCs. And then last year, we were told by Lisa Weber, the planning manager, that we would see those changes by spring. I think we mentioned that at the last meeting. And so now all of a sudden came up a Planning Commission study session yesterday. And that Planning Commission study session, in part, was going to talk about updates to the Unified Development Code. So we thought that was very, very interesting. In the other aspect that they were going to talk about, they were going to talk about the Lyons Avenue Corridor Plan and what they were going to do for changes in zoning for the Lyons Avenue in Newhall. And one of the things that it says right in the front of the Lyons Corridor Plan is that they want to change that plan to maintain the distinctive community character of that neighborhood. So I want to say that we need to go and follow that through in our neighborhoods here on the east side. Now, this probably is a little bit hard for you to see, and I'll send you those charts because since I got them yesterday, I just took pictures of them. But what they said was they received public comments, and they were going to react to those public comments. Now, I'm sure Frank didn't mean when he was talking to us that you can just call and complain about anything. And after you call and complain about anything enough times, code enforcement is going to tell you it can't be done. So we're talking about what changes they are. And they said they received public comments on UDC terms and definitions. That comment came from us. At the first meeting that they held to discuss what UDC changes would be available, Rick and I attended. And Rick, you can probably remember everybody's name that attended. Yeah. Yeah. That's because it was Rick and I. Well, that's right, we remember. One of the things we talked about was consolidate the terms and definitions of UDCs because currently in the codes, definitions are sprinkled throughout the whole Unified Development Code. So you can be talking about a term and looking at one section and talking to someone who's looking at a term defined in another section and have a totally different conversation. So we said, wouldn't it be great if you consolidated all of those terms and definitions? And then we talked about a uniform sign program for advertising. Because one thing that we noticed was all of the advertising signs, especially for new developments, for rentals, they're getting larger all the time. You know, the economy is not in the greatest shape now, so every single strip mall, it seems like, or every single place that has retail has got a sign out front that says for rent, for lease. And those signs are growing in size. They're getting bigger, and some of the places have put more than one up. And we're saying we ought to have, just like we have for every other sign, we ought to have some regulations that control those. And then our most important thing was provide a method to enable discretion for applying new codes to existing older neighborhoods. You know, down there at City Hall, we have a set of planners. And I had this discussion with them in 2007. And we said, you know, you generate a code down here that you think will really be great for new construction. And we think that's wonderful. But it doesn't change anything in the community. the community stays exactly the same as it was, even though you wrote this code. And if you go out now and after the fact try to impose that verbatim, well, it's going to be a big problem because you're going to have a lot of homes affected. And the other thing that we talked about was when a decision gets made, there needs to be a way to document it. So we can talk about, let's say, you brought up extended driveways. Well, you didn't invent that term. The code enforcement guys invented that term. And then when it didn't fit their need anymore, now they're saying they're walkways. So we need these things written down because it's not just if a bunch of people complain, it's what are the requirements and what are the rules. So that's what we were asking for. Well, the last one that we saw in here was really interesting because these were supposed to be comments about UDC changes. And what did that last comment says? And it says increase enforcement of UDCs for residential development standards. Now, I don't know where that came up in a discussion about UDC changes, but it certainly fits with the survey that's currently being done by community preservation. And planning and community preservation are the same organization. Whoop. So then we went and we got to see what are the proposed changes. At this point, we didn't actually get to see the changes. We just got to see kind of a definition of the changes. We don't get to see those for another 3 or 4 weeks. And the only one that we saw that dealt with what we were talking about was updated definitions. That's it. That's the only thing we're going to change out of the comments we had. It's not going to help us. So they talked about revisions to UDC sections and realized these are their charts, not mine. And they talked about sign standards, which I thought was great, and definitions. What about the rest of them? What about the rest of the things that are going to happen? Because the problem is not just our problem. It's not just a resident's problem. It certainly is your problem when someone comes to you and says, oh, you've got to do this to your property, or you've got to do that to the property. But it's also the problem of the code enforcement guy that's trying to enforce these things. You know, that's got to be a tough job. There's only 6 of them to do the whole city. At the same time, they're working with requirements that are squishy at best. And it just creates a problem for everybody that's involved with that issue. And you saw that come up in Saugus. You saw it come up in the Benelli tract when the codes and the tract didn't look anything like each other. So we need a way that we need to solve this problem, and we need to solve it permanently. So I thought those were very disappointing results. We desperately need a method of adapting those new ordinances to existing neighborhoods. And I think in a later chart I was going to tell you that I have a conversation with James Chow. And they know what the problem is. So I don't understand why it's not being addressed. What about a grandfather ordinance? What about saying that, you know, if something was existing prior to a code being established, it's grandfathered? If it was required to be, I'm not saying just if it wasn't permitted, don't require the permit. But I'm saying what about looking at those situations and writing down what you intend to do? Now, right from the beginning, in 2008, when the extreme neighborhood makeover started on my corner intentionally because they wanted feedback, and you know that I would give them feedback. We talked about what are you going to do and how are you going to write it down? How are you going to decide exactly what you're going to enforce? Because in some cases, some of the codes, you would be writing up 85%, 90% of the houses. You really think that's going to go over? You know what's going to happen. We're going to have 100 people down at City Hall, and they're all going to be yelling and screaming, and the problem, it will go away, and you'll look foolish. So how are we going to do this, and how are we going to write it down? We actually had a process in the beginning that we were negotiating it, writing it down. We were supposed to update it monthly. It never happened. So we need a method of documenting those enforcement and applicability decisions which are visible to the public, so you know where you stand. What is it that you need to comply with today? What is it that you need to comply with tomorrow? And that alleviates the problem of negotiating the same issue again and again. And I think that's part of what you're talking about in the audience. And we need a decision. It needs to be written down, and it needs to be enforced. And we need to define enforcement policy and appeal process. Because you're going to hear me say in a little bit, Having the city do this is worse than having a homeowners association. I moved into my neighborhood because I didn't want a homeowners association, okay? But at least in a homeowners association, if they get too out of hand every year, you can vote them out. Get a new group, right? But you can't in this case. So what now? Well, I spoke during public participation, and I raised those issues. I had a conversation with James Chow, and we talked about applying codes to new codes to existing neighborhoods, some different ways of documenting the decisions, and how it had an effect on both the city employees and the residents. And what we need to do is request a draft copy of those UDCs so we can understand what they say, propose some solutions. Now, instead of just complaining, we need to go propose some solutions. And I know we've done it before, but we ought to go do it again. And then we need to continue to press for the changes we feel are important and not give up. Now, here's the tentative schedule. We're going to go mark our calendar because here on we're going to have community meetings in the fall of 2012. That's as close as they can give us the date. We're going to have the third and fourth community meeting, and the actual changes are supposed to be available to us at that time. So mark your calendar, realize that I'm going to remind you when it is, and we're just going to have to continue to look at these things and see what we're going to do. So it seemed to me very odd that at the same time this was happening, and in the same time frame this was happening, Community Preservation is conducting a survey. And this is exactly what it says in the announcement. It said the survey results will help the city refine the community preservation ordinances. We've been asking for that since 2005, okay? And which are designed to preserve the aesthetic value of the Santa Clarita neighborhoods, increase property values, and lower crime. And also help world peace and whatever else they can think of. But the whole thing about it is that we're starting now to decide what to do. We've been discussing this thing for years. So here's the survey. I'd like all of you to take it. Whether you think this is an important issue or not an important issue, I want you all to take it. And I want you to realize what it says, because those things may come back and affect you if they're written into the codes. So please rate the following violations. I never knew that parking a boat in the public view was a violation. I don't think it is. So look at this. What is the, and you're going to see some of these things appear over and over again. Please rate the violations below how much you feel it affects your neighborhood. Trash bins in the public view, that's something that code enforcement has been after people right now. Overgrown weeds, or the fact that their yards are overgrown. They've been working that currently. Concrete covering front yards. They've been working that to some extent, but there's a discussion of what that means. Severely chipped paint on surfaces. Well, dilapidated construction. That's something that they've been doing now since 2008. Garage conversions it has been an issue because it creates illegal housing. And in our area, they've gone through and eliminated quite a few of those. Now, junk and debris on private property and public view is also something that they've been doing. But unpermitted construction is not something that they've been looking at. And the whole issue of unpermitted construction is a whole discussion in itself of what's going to happen if these 6 guys are going to try to go out and do that as well. Illegal fencing material. Anybody here know what illegal fencing material is? Huh?
Chain link.
Chain link in your front yard. Right. Anything?
Well, I get half credit for that.
No, that's not the material. That's the height. It'd be interesting to know what that is. And clotheslines in the public view. How important do you feel it is to keep the paint color the same on your property when repairs are made on painted surfaces? Does this mean that the city is intending to set paint and color standards for us? Well, I don't know, because if your house was the original color, then you can't change it. How important do you feel is maintaining properties free of weeds in a residential neighborhood to improve appearances. Isn't that a question that just got asked in the last one? How concerned are you with the collection of the following items on a commercial or residential property within the public view? Now, I don't understand this question at all. Collection of trash, rubbish? Does that mean we're concerned with collecting rubbish in the street? No? Oh, I'm glad you know what it means. I don't know what it means. Or does it mean whether or not it is collected or stored on the side of a house? How about hazardous materials and waste? Scrap metals, broken machinery, stockpiled dirt or fill material, automotive parts. By the way, storage of stuff like that in the public view, code enforcement hasn't been enforcing since 2008. This is a great question. I bet I can get the answer from every one of you, and it's all going to be the same. Do you think any person who illegally dumps should be responsible for the code violation along with the property owner? Anybody think that's not true? Please rate the importance of maintaining residential properties free of inoperative vehicles, including cars, trucks, motorized cycles, and vessels, including boats and personal watercraft. Does that mean inoperative boats? Or does it mean all boats? What does it mean? Please rank ground coverings from the best to worst for a front yard. Lawn and decorative plants, a lawn, complete concrete, decorative bark. Anybody use decorative bark? They do? I did once. And then it rained. What happens to decorative bark when it rains? It leaves, right? Bare dirt, gravel. For a while, code enforcement was telling people, you don't have to plant your parkway, put gravel in it. And they did it a little bit down the street from Stillmore, down the street from where you live. Right on the path to school. It was everywhere. So we've been talking to them about, hey, no gravel, guys. Gravel's not a really great thing to do. Should the city of Santa Clarita issue permits for construction or zoning while requesting property owner has an active violation, has active code violation cases? What do you think? No. You don't think so? So if I have a code violation case, the code enforcement sends me a letter for trash cans in a public view and my roof's leaking, I shouldn't be able to get a permit to repair it? Interesting. Interesting question. I would say that, you know what will happen if you do that? The guys will just repair the roof anyway. A parent or guardian should be responsible for monetary damages due to vandalism caused by their minor child. I thought there already were. Aren't you responsible for your minor? Currently, the city of Santa Clarita requires property owners to remove graffiti on their property within 7 days. How long do you think the property owner should take to clean the graffiti off their property? What do you believe the most important code enforcement issue in our city is right now? Temporary signs in the right-of-way. I had someone call me yesterday. They thought that was a horrible thing. And I'll tell you what, it is a problem. But in a lot of cases, a lot of that problem is being mitigated right now because code enforcement is doing monthly sign sweeps and tearing down a lot of signs. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on something that I kind of thought is absurd. The recent measure that the city council, I believe they passed it regarding political signs, I thought was rather absurd that they're only going to fine them for the political signs if they come down and pick them up. And if they don't pick them up, you know, they don't have to worry about ever paying a $100 fine, something like that. And I just thought it was sort of ridiculous because if they want to discourage them from putting signs up, they need to fine them regardless of whether they pick the sign up or not. I just thought that was rather absurd, and I just wanted to interject.
Well, I think part of that issue deals with this. For a long time, we talked about developers and builders that would plaster some of our streets with signs. M&B Homes here used White's Canyon. They would put a sign up every 10 feet up White's Canyon, over Via Princessa and up White's Canyon, saying, go to M&B Homes, and they were trying to sell their homes in Plum. And we said to the guys, hey, what code enforcement was doing was they take the signs down, and these aren't political signs, right? They take the signs down, they take them to their yard, they call M&B Homes, M&B Homes comes and picks them up, and they say, don't do that again. And then 2 weeks later, the signs reappear up and down White's Canyon. So we called and we said, why can't you do something about this? Why can't you fine M&B Homes? You know whose signs there are, right? And the answer we got was this. We can't tell who put the sign up. So since we can't tell who put the sign up, we can't give them a fine. So I would assume if I would conclude from that, if they can't fine M&B Homes, they can't fine the guys for political signs either. So they're saying, okay, if you want to collect them, you got to pay to get them back. And I think that one of the things that happened at the end of the city council meeting you're talking about, right afterwards I talked to Montez, the attorney, and he's supposedly going to come back with a solution that controls all signs. Because right now it seems like the only time we get code enforcement out there 6 days a week taking signs down is when there's a city council election. And that's not the right time.
Yeah, when the candidates don't take their signs down, even after the election, they don't need
I'm talking about before the election.
Yeah, but even say after the election, they don't want them anymore, so they can let the city clean up their mess for them, and
Yeah.
They should fine them, if they don't clean up.
Well, that might be what happens. We're gonna have to wait and see. But I agree with you. I worked on 2 campaigns, and in both of the campaigns, we went out and we each had an area that where our signs were, and
My wife and I do the
and we went back and cleaned those
We
areas.
try to make sure that after the election, or when the time is up, we go back and we retreat them. We're responsible.
Yes. No, I agree with you. I agree. I mean, I thought worse than our city council election this time was the state primary. And all of the Patricia McKeon signs that were up everywhere, right? So that's a problem. How about poorly maintained private properties? I mean, in some cases, I've seen properties that code enforcement have gone after that were really, really bad, were really dilapidated, and they caused them to be repaired. And so I thought that was good. Garages converted into living space, I have a little bit of an issue because remember the rooming house ordinance? Does everybody remember the rooming house ordinance? Rooming house ordinance was supposed to say if you have more than 3 rental agreements in a piece of property, then that was illegal. That part never made it into the UDCs. So it turns out that finding people living in too many people living in a house has become more difficult, and I have a couple of examples of that if we want to talk about it later. But certainly garages converted into living space illegally is a bad thing. Weed abatement and other. If you have some others, go ahead and tell them what you think are the most important thing. Which community in Santa Clarita do you live? Canyon Country, New Saugus, Valencia. I don't know whether they're going to carve these up and tell us what areas the different comments came from, but it's going to be very interesting. How long have you been here? How old are you? And are you a man or a woman? Huh? That says how old are you, right?
No, what year were you born?
Oh, that says how old you are. We can all do math. So would you be available for a focus group to discuss further changes to the Santa Clarita Municipal Code? I hope everybody's going to shake their head and say, yes, I am. If yes, please provide the following information so we may contact you. And I say take the survey. You've got to do it soon because the deadline is July the 6th. When I send out the links in a week, it'll be before July the 6th. I will send out the link to that survey. I'm asking all of you to take the survey and volunteer for the focus group. Because what's going to happen is going to happen. 2005 is when the city came to us and proposed proactive code enforcement. The emphasis was supposed to be on curb appeal issues. Pretty much that's what they've been doing since 2008. And in a lot of cases, it's improved our neighborhoods greatly. But the answer at that time was, and I'll bet the answer still is, we don't want the city to become our homeowners association. And there's other questions. They asked them in Saugus, why aren't they asking them here? Do you want proactive code enforcement in your neighborhood? I mean, that's a good question that they didn't bother to ask. How will code enforcement maintain the flavor of the neighborhood if they don't really have a good method to do that? How will code enforcement document their criteria and decisions, which they have not done? Where will they get the head count to expand code enforcement's scope of effort and maintain a reasonable timeline? In 2008, they promised Lower North Oaks would be done in 2 years. Okay? Well, actually, yes, all 4 quadrants of Lower North Oaks, 6 months per quadrant. They started in my neighborhood. They have yet to get across the street. Okay? It is now a lot longer than what their commitment was. The last commitment, when I talked to Cruz a couple of months ago, was they were going to finish just my section in the southeast quadrant in 2 months. They are not done. Okay. Will all volunteers, the people that volunteer the focus group, be accepted? Is everybody's voice going to be heard? Will the decisions be made by area or tract or neighborhood? I mean, if you're going to keep the flavor of the neighborhood, you've got to maintain some differences between different areas because different areas look different. And will the residents get a final vote? So when all this comes up, are we going to get a vote as to what it's going to be? Because having code enforcement responsible for CC&R-like issues, to me, is worse than a homeowners association. An HOA board gets out of hand, we can vote them out. We can go to the board and ask for changes to the CC&Rs. There's lots of things that we can do. But when it's the city, you can't do that. And the only option is filling up the city council chambers, and Frank doesn't like that. Right, Frank? Okay. So it'd be good if we can enact a real change, something that solves the problem. And maybe, well, we can forget about all the things that have happened in the past, and we'll carry on from now till the future. So take that survey, volunteer for the focus group, and maybe we can make all this happen and come out well. Is there any question? Yes, ma'am.
Are they going to send out? Are they going to send out? Is the city going to send out the surveys to all the homeowners, or just different parts? Or are they going to do an email? How are they going to send it out?
They sent out the survey to none of the homeowners. They put it in a press release. And the link is on the internet. So the way you're going to find out about it is we're going to send you the link. But they're not going to mail out the survey. Okay, so let's hope that we can end up with a good solution to this that gives us a good final answer.